Elon was born in Pretoria, South Africa in 1971, and ever since he was a kid, it was obvious Elon was gifted. At 12, he taught himself to code and sold a video game he designed called Blaster to a computer magazine for $500. At 17, he left South Africa. He had watched the country he grew up in, studied its trajectory, and decided his future wasn't there. He made his way to Canada on a Commonwealth passport through his mother's side, spent time doing manual labor, cleaning out a boiler room, cutting logs, before getting into Queen's University in Ontario. He transferred to the University of Pennsylvania 2 years later, where he studied economics and physics simultaneously, because one degree apparently wasn't sufficient. In 1995, he was accepted into a PhD program in energy physics at Stanford University. He showed up, attended for 2 days, and dropped out. The internet was happening, and he wasn't going to watch it from a classroom. He co-founded Zip2 with his brother Kimball, a web software company that provided city guides and maps to newspapers. In 1999, Compaq acquired it for $307 million. Musk's share was $22 million. He was 27 years old and had never worked a conventional job in his life. He didn't slow down. He took most of that money and co-founded X.com, an online financial services company. X.com merged with a competing startup called Confinity, and the combined entity was eventually renamed PayPal. When eBay acquired PayPal in 2002 for $1.5 billion, Musk's share came to $180 million after tax. Most people who make $180 million before they turn 32 buy a house, maybe an island, and spend the rest of their life managing the investment. Musk did something that, by any objective financial analysis, was almost certainly insane. He took the money and decided to personally fund the solution to two of the largest problems facing civilization: humanity's dependence on fossil fuels and its confinement to a single planet. He founded SpaceX in 2002 with the explicit goal of making humanity multiplanetary. He put $100 million of his own money in. Then, a year later, he heard about a small company in Silicon Valley that was trying to build an electric sports car. Here is the part of the Tesla story that has been quietly rewritten over time by sheer force of association. Elon Musk did not found Tesla Motors. On July 1, 2003, two engineers named Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning incorporated Tesla Motors in San Carlos, California. Eberhard was the CEO. Tarpenning handled the financial and technical architecture. They named the company after Nikola Tesla, the Serbian-American inventor whose work on alternating current and electric motors had laid the theoretical foundation for everything they were trying to build. Their thesis was specific and contrarian. Electric cars had been attempted before and had failed, most famously the GME V1, which was leased briefly in the late 1990s before being recalled and destroyed, an episode so strange and controversial it became the subject of a documentary. The conventional wisdom in the automotive industry was that consumers didn't want electric vehicles, that the range was too limited, the charging too slow, and the performance too poor to compete with internal combustion. Eberhard and Tarpenning thought the conventional wisdom was wrong about the reason. Their argument was that electric cars had failed not because of the technology, but because every company that tried to build one made it small, slow, underpowered, and aesthetically depressing. They believed that if you built an electric car that was genuinely faster, more exciting, and more desirable than a petrol car, the market would not only accept it, it would demand it. The proof of concept they had in mind was a sports car. They needed capital. In early 2004, they reached out to Elon Musk. Musk led Tesla's Series A funding round, putting in $6.5 million of his own money and taking the role of chairman of the board. He was not a co-founder in any operational sense. He was the first major investor, and given how much money he had put in relative to everyone else, the most powerful single voice in the company's direction. However, the distinction between investor and founder would blur quickly as the company ran into problems that required someone willing to bet far more than money on the outcome. Tesla's first car was the Roadster. It was built on a modified Lotus Elise chassis, a lightweight British sports car body that Tesla's engineers adapted to house an electric powertrain. The goal was a vehicle that could do 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 4 seconds and cover more than 200 miles on a single charge. Numbers that, at the time, no electric car had ever come close to achieving. When prototypes were shown to press and potential customers in 2006, the reaction was immediate and visceral. However, the gap between a working prototype and a car you can manufacture at scale and sell profitably is where most startups die. And Tesla was about to discover just how wide that gap actually was. The original cost estimate for producing each Roadster was approximately $65,000. By the time the car was ready for volume production, the actual per-unit cost had ballooned to over $140,000. Every car Tesla sold was being sold at a loss of tens of thousands of dollars. The engineering challenges of adapting a Lotus chassis to electric components had proven far more complex than anticipated. Internal tension was escalating. Eberhard's management of the production process came under intense criticism from the board. In late 2007, he was removed as CEO. His replacement, Michael Marks, lasted less than 3 months before being replaced by Zeev Drory. By mid-2008, the company had burned through the vast majority majority of its funding. The global financial crisis made new investment from outside sources nearly impossible, and Musk, who had been pouring more of his own money into Tesla throughout this period on top of his original investment, was simultaneously watching SpaceX detonate 3 rockets in a row off the coast of Kwajalein Atoll in the Pacific. He had poured everything he had made from PayPal into these two companies, and in the autumn of 2008, both of them were dying at the same time. What happened in December 2008 is one of the most compressed, high-stakes sequences in the history of modern business. SpaceX, running on the last of Musk's personal reserves, needed to fund one final launch attempt. The company had enough money for one more try. If the fourth Falcon 1 launch failed, SpaceX was finished. Musk had already told his engineers that this was the last shot. If it worked, NASA, which had been watching closely, had indicated they would consider a commercial contract. If it didn't, there was no fifth attempt. Meanwhile, Tesla needed a financing round to close before the end of the year, or it would miss payroll. Musk had already personally loaned the company millions during the year to keep it running. The board was fractured. Several early investors had walked away. On September 28, 2008, Falcon 1 reached orbit. It was the first privately developed liquid-fueled rocket in history to do so. Within weeks, NASA awarded SpaceX a $1.6 billion contract. SpaceX was saved. Tesla still needed the financing round to close. On December 3, 2008, according to Musk's own account, within a matter of days of the company's final deadline, the round closed. Tesla had survived by the thinnest possible margin. Musk had contributed approximately $12 million of his own money. He later told an interviewer that he had genuinely believed there was a more than 50% chance Tesla would fail, regardless of what he did. He had funded it anyway. Musk was now CEO of Tesla. He had total control and virtually no financial cushion. The Roadster was in limited production. The company needed its next car, a real car, designed, engineered, and built without running out of money again. He had survived the choice. Now he had to build something worth choosing. The Model S launched in June 2012. It was not what anyone in the automotive industry expected. It was a full-size luxury sedan, designed entirely from the ground up as an electric vehicle, with a range of over 265 miles on a single charge and a 0 to 60 time that embarrassed most sports cars. The interior was built around a 17-inch touchscreen that replaced almost every physical control in the cabin, an interface decision that looked radical in 2012 and became the template for every premium interior designed in the decade that followed. Motor Trend awarded it Car of the Year. However, a great car and a functioning car company are two entirely different things. Tesla was still burning cash. It needed volume. The Model S was priced between $70,000 and $100,000, a real car for real buyers, but not a mass-market vehicle. The Model X SUV followed in 2015, featuring the Falcon Wing rear doors that became immediately iconic and immediately problematic. The complexity of the mechanism caused production delays that stretched for months. Tesla missed delivery targets publicly and badly. Musk responded to the pressure the way he responded to most pressure, by escalating. The Model 3 was announced in 2016 as Tesla's mass-market vehicle, starting at $35,000, a car designed to put electric vehicles within reach of ordinary buyers rather than wealthy early adopters. The production target was 5,000 cars per week. Musk had made the decision to automate the assembly line to a degree that no car factory in the world had attempted. Robots handling processes that every other manufacturer still did by hand. The execution failed. The robots broke down. The automated systems created bottlenecks that human workers couldn't resolve quickly enough. Quality control issues appeared in early cars. Musk moved a sleeping bag to the factory floor and stayed. By mid-2018, the line hit 5,000 units in a week, then 6,000, then 7,000. The Model 3 became the best-selling electric car in history. It also became the best-selling premium sedan in the United States by total revenue, outselling the Mercedes C-Class, the BMW 3 Series, and every other competitor in its segment, not just among electric cars, among all cars in that category. In 2020, Tesla did something that a significant portion of Wall Street had publicly insisted would never happen. It posted 4 consecutive quarters of profit. That sounds like a modest milestone. However, 4 consecutive profitable quarters is the requirement for inclusion in the S&P 500. When a company is added to the S&P 500, every fund that tracks the index must buy its shares. Tesla was added to the S&P 500 in December 2020. It was, at the time of inclusion, one of the largest additions in the index's history. A company that had nearly ceased to exist in a Fremont parking lot in December 2008 was worth more than the entire legacy automotive industry. However, the number that actually mattered was 1.8 million, the number of vehicles Tesla delivered globally in 2023. Not because 1.8 million is an enormous volume. Toyota sells 10 million cars a year. Volkswagen sells 9 million. By unit volume, Tesla is a mid-sized manufacturer. What 1.8 million represented was proof of viability at scale. And that proof didn't just validate Tesla, it forced every other manufacturer to move. Volkswagen committed 180 billion euros arrows to electrification over 5 years. Ford restructured its entire business around an EV division. Stellantis, Hyundai, BMW, Mercedes, every major manufacturer in the world announced electrification targets that, 10 years earlier, their own executives had publicly called unnecessary or economically irrational. None of those decisions happened without Tesla demonstrating that there was a market large enough to justify them. Every charging station being built, every battery gigafactory being planned, the entire global infrastructure being constructed around electric vehicles, runs in a direct line back to the moment Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpenning decided to build something fast enough that people would actually want it, and Elon Musk decided to risk everything on the possibility that they were right. The industry didn't change because regulators forced it to. It changed because a company that shouldn't have survived proved that the future was more profitable than the past. Today, Tesla is no longer just a car company in any conventional sense. It operates the supercharger network, the largest fast-charging infrastructure in the world, with tens of thousands of stations across North America, Europe, Asia, and beyond. Competitor manufacturers, including Ford and GM, have announced their vehicles will be compatible with the Tesla charging standard, an acknowledgement that the infrastructure Tesla built has become the industry default. Its autopilot and full self-driving systems have accumulated more real-world autonomous driving miles than every competitor combined. The gigafactories in Nevada, Texas, Berlin, and Shanghai have collectively redefined what large-scale battery manufacturing looks like. Elon Musk is, depending on which day you check the markets, the wealthiest or second wealthiest person alive. But the actual story, the one worth telling, has never been about the wealth. In 2006, 2 years after investing in Tesla, and 3 years before anyone outside the aerospace industry knew who he was, Musk published what he called Tesla's secret master plan. It was 4 sentences of strategy that the press treated as the optimistic fantasy of a rich man with too much confidence. He followed the plan, exactly, in order, over 20 years. The man who bet his last dollar on an industry that didn't want to change, built the largest electric car brand in the world, and forced every other manufacturer on Earth to follow him there.